Hi friends, welcome to Embrace the Question. Steve here. We are in our study of the 7 churches of Revelation. You'll probably recall not too long ago I released a study on the 7-branched menorah, and that was basically a close look at the groupings of 7 that we find in Scripture. We talked about the 7 millennia, the 7 creation days, the 7 feasts of Israel. One thing that we did not talk about were these 7 feasts, or the 7 churches of Revelation. Do you recall what was so special about the menorah? Well, lots of things are special, but particularly the number 4, the servant lamp, the shemesh. And that right there would represent the church at Thyatira. It also represents, as we call it, the messianic lamp, or the lamp that feeds all the other lamps. It's where the fire comes from. It's where the oil comes from. So every time I think of this number 4, I think of fire. When you think of the 4th High Holy Day, the 4th Feast of Israel, which is Pentecost, what do you think of? Well, it was the day that the Spirit was poured out. But what happened? Fire on the shoulders of all that were in attendance that received the Spirit. What do we see here in Revelation chapter 2 that might give us that same hint that this image is progressing throughout all of Scripture? Let's take a look. And unto the angel of the church of Thyatira write these things, says the Son of God, who has his eyes like unto the flame of fire, and his feet like fine brass. That is awesome. So we are right on with our picture, and I have tried to do a very in-depth study of this church, and it's too big for the time allotted for this video. So we're just going to hit some high points here. Thyatira is actually in the Greek pronounced Thyatira, which is, I don't know exactly where we get Thyatira from our own enunciation. Again, it's the 4th church. It was famous in Asia Minor as a center for textiles and skilled artisans. So if you'll recall in the book of Acts, not sure which chapter, there was a lady there named Lydia who was from Thyatira, and she dealt in purple cloth. So there were a lot of artisan work done in this city. It was a center for that. And because of that, there were a lot of guilds based on these skills: woodworking, metalworking, stoneworking, cloth, probably medicine as well. Everything that might be representative of another god. So if you were in a guild that specialized in healing or medicine, you were probably in a guild that was under the umbrella of the god Asclepius, who was the god of healing in that day. Well, while that was perfectly normal to the Greeks and to the Greek mind, it was very abnormal to the Christian mind. And for those Greeks who were being converted over to the Christianity and to the knowledge of one true God and one power, there were a lot of things there to take offense from. One of the customs required, according to history, was to be a part of some of these guilds. The members had to sacrifice to the god over that guild. So they had to make a sacrifice to that god, and they had to often eat of the sacrifices that were offered. And we're always getting these admonishments by Jesus to these churches that you are eating the meat sacrificed to idols. And I often wondered, so what? Well, part of this is much of what we might face today as Christians. Do we give our lives, give our work, give our skills, give everything to an industry or an occupation that is anti-values, anti-morals, things that are destructive? And that's what those people had to do, a lot of them. They were either coming out of this artisan industry in Thyatira, or they were skilled, but they were newly Christian converts, and they were now drawn in multiple directions. How do I serve the one real God and maintain my fealty to him and stay in my guild and make a living for my family? And you see what the problem was. People were belonging to these guilds because to be in the guild meant that you had a certain amount of publicity that went along with your skill. If you were a skilled tailor or weaver, then belonging to the Weavers Guild meant that you could easily sell your items, that you could easily make a living for your family, and without being in the guild, you were likely a nobody, someone who really struggled and perhaps faced with moving to a different place to live. There was also a matter of selling or buying in the local markets. Those who studied, those who came to a knowledge of God as the true God and gave their life to Jesus, they developed a term for all the false god, and they called them beast gods. And there were certain rules in the agora and other places where they could not buy or sell without declaring fealty or taking a mark that represented the god of their guild or the god of that marketplace. So now we understand a little bit about their culture and where this mark came from, and it was a mark of that beast. That's pretty awesome when it comes to things that I had never really heard of, right? So let's take another look. Thyatira was the church that embraced affliction due to faulty doctrine. Now remember, each church, the letter to each church, Jesus introduces himself as the solution to the problem that they have. We can find this in verse 18 when he says, these things say the Son of God, who has eyes like unto the flame of fire and feet like unto fine brass. These are pictures of judgment, either being a judge or having been judged. The eyes like a flame of fire is the eyes of a judge, the eyes that can see right through the fake, the temporal. But also the feet like unto fine brass. That indicates that he has walked the fires of judgment. And that reminds me very much of the story in Daniel, where he appears in the fiery furnace with the 3 Hebrew children. You'll remember that story. He walks through the crucible of judgment with his kids. So the solution to Thyatira's problem, the church at Thyatira's problem, was to recognize Jesus as both judge and having been judged. He was their judgment. He took their judgment. You recall Jesus' word, now is the judgment of this world. Now the ruler of this world is being judged. But Thyatira had forgotten that, and they had embraced a teaching that said, your affliction has been brought on you because you aren't doing enough. You aren't performing to a standard. Now, who was doing this? This was being done, it says, by a woman identified as quote unquote Jezebel. Was her name really Jezebel? No. Jesus was pointing out a woman in their midst who called herself a prophetess, and he called her Jezebel because he knew that everybody that read the letter would understand her nature, because they understood who Jezebel was in their history. She was one of the most wicked people, one of the most wicked leaders Israel had ever known. She was the wife of Ahab, and she was bent on seducing all of Israel into Baal worship. And she was a great manipulator. This woman was doing the very same thing. She was leading them into a false doctrine, into worshiping idols and eating things sacrificed to idols. Anytime you see fornication listed, commit fornication, that is a spiritual fornication. Anything that has to do with idol worship is often synonymous with fornication in these passages. What does that mean she was doing? She was likely teaching them that God would only accept them if they would bring their skills to her, their money to her, their time to her, and let her intercede on their behalf for the favor of God. This would have been fairly widely taught for other gods, but not the one true God. Our God does not require that. He does not want that. So she was painting a false picture of who God really is, which is what the Greek word eidolon means. Paint a false picture of God. And that's exactly what she's being accused of. It's also worth our time to take a quick look at what her judgment is. Excuse me, what her judgment is for doing all of this. Jesus says, I've given her space to repent, and she will not turn back. She will not change her mind about this. Behold, I will cast her into a bed, and them that commit adultery with her into great tribulation, except they repent of their deeds. And I will kill her children with death. And all the churches shall know that I am he which searches the reins and the hearts, and I will give unto every one of you according to your works. What is he talking about? Because this sounds so very anti-grace. This doesn't exactly sound like the Jesus that we're hearing about in some of our grace churches. Well, there's good reason for that, because a lot of this imagery that we're being given is symbolic. And it does argue with other scriptures that we will find. Does he really intend to kill her children with death? Well, if we go to Ezekiel chapter 18, verse 20, we can find a verse that says, the soul who sins is the one who will die. The son will not share the guilt of the father, nor will the father share the guilt of the son. That was a common belief of the people of Israel and others outside of Israel, were that when the father sins, that God will punish him and punish his family, and maybe punish their families throughout the generations. And yes, that's spoken of in the law. Moses pronounced a lot of that upon the people. And God corrects it here through Ezekiel and says, no, the sin of the soul belongs to the soul that sins. The guilt is on that one person, not on his son and not on his father. So does God intend to kill her children with death because of what she did? Or is it possible that this is symbolizing something else? Well, I believe that it is absolutely symbolic of something else. When it talks about her children, the children of Jezebel, we are talking about her motives, her intentions, her actions, those things that she has set into motion to achieve her goals, her if you want to use a Hebraic word or phrase for it, her ways. These are her children. And when Psalm chapter 1 says, the way of the wicked will perish. It's the very last verse of Psalm 1, I believe. The ways of the wicked will perish. That is, the children of the wicked will perish, because there is nothing there but the temporal. There is nothing eternal in it. So, this is a bed that she has made. And her children and those that surround her to achieve the same goals that she had set up for this church were doomed from the very start, because they were built out of the flesh. And that is what I believe Jesus is saying here. It is interesting. The churches shall know that I am he which searches the reins and hearts. The reins in the Greek is the kidneys, the very innermost parts of a person. So he's saying, I know you. I can see what is real and what is fake about what you're doing. I really believe that Jezebel possibly was involved in some of the guilds and the money that was flowing through these systems, and she was wielding religion as a weapon against the people in order to make money for herself and those involved with her. So these people had to endure that. But God says that many of you have not accepted this doctrine, have not entertained it at all, and I have nothing more of a burden to place upon you. Just hold on. Hold on. And that's pretty awesome. Now, the end of this, starting with verse 26, I find very interesting. He that overcomes, we've talked about it. It's at the end of every letter to every church. He that overcomes, here's what you get. And understand that we are overcomers in him. We are in the overcoming one if we are believers in Christ. So, for he that overcomes, it could just as easily say that. For you that are in me and keep my works unto the end, I will give you power over the nations. What's power over the nations? Do we all get, how many nations are there? Do we all get to rule? That's what I was always taught growing up. But again, trying to ingest this and view it through the lens of the finished work, I believe this is indicating power over the nations, power over the ethos, that which makes you you. Did I write it down? The ethos, your want, your mannerisms, those things, like I said, those things that make you you. You will have power over those. For those that overcome and keep my works to the end, I'm going to give you power over those things that make you you, those fleshly things that you have to contend with every day. Now, is that what he's saying? Let's read on. And he will rule them with a rod of iron, as the vessels of a potter shall be broken to shivers, even as I received of my Father. Meaning, even as I did when I walked, and I had complete control over all of these ethos powers in my life, all of the nations in my life, the imagination, all of the nations. So what do you get if you can do that? Assuming that is correct, what do you get? And I will give him the morning star. Remember, who is our morning star? Jesus himself. We are on the fourth church. We are on the Messianic church. What's the prize? You get the Messiah. You get Jesus himself. He that has an ear, let him hear what the Spirit says unto the churches. I think that's pretty cool. Certainly, it was very heavy for that church. That church was going through a lot of tense political and social forces. It was just going through a lot of turmoil. We, fortunately, right now anyway, are not, but we can take these letters and apply them to our lives and still find out that when we get a hold of our own nations, those things that make us who we are, we can control them and rule them with a rod of iron, then we can be like him. It makes us like him, and the reward is him, the morning star. It's not unlike Enoch, who walked with God until he wasn't. There was only God. That's the goal. Okay? I hope this blessed you. I hope if you have to teach this, I hope this gave you a lot to think about and maybe some directions to take. Like, subscribe. Hey, next week we're going to talk about the Church of Sardis. Okay? Peace. Until next time.